Ambassador Kethra stared at the star chart spread across his desk. The blue light from his computer screen made the maps glow in the dim room. He'd been studying these charts for 3 hours, but something was wrong. Something that made his 4 eyes narrow and his breath catch in his throat. Every single map ended at the same place, right at the edge of human space. Kethra was not like other members of his species. Most Vorthons cared only about trade deals and making money. They were happy to stay in their comfortable ships and never ask hard questions. But Kethra loved to learn. He collected star maps from every race he met. His office on Harmony Point, space station, was full of navigation data from 40 different alien civilizations. The maps came from everywhere. The Zilani Empire had been exploring space for 2,000 years. The crystalline people had mapped half the galaxy with their crystal ships. The ancient keepers had charts that were older than most civilizations, but they all stopped at the same invisible line in space. He picked up a chart from the Mindari. These people had the best telescopes in the galaxy. They could see stars that were millions of light years away. Their map showed thousands of star systems in perfect detail. Then nothing. Just empty space where human territory began. Kethra pulled out another chart. This one came from the Wanderer fleets. These nomads had been traveling through space for 10,000 years. They knew every trade route and every hidden passage between the stars, but their ancient maps also ended at human space. It made no sense. The door to his office made a soft sound. Kethra looked up as John Carter walked into the room. The human diplomat was a man in his 50s with gray hair and kind blue eyes. He carried a tablet with trade agreements between their two peoples. "Good morning, Ambassador," John said with a smile. "Ready to discuss the grain shipments?" Kethra set down the star chart he was holding. "Mr. Carter, may I ask you something strange?" John sat down in the chair across from the desk. "Of course, what's on your mind?" Kethra turned his computer screen so John could see it. The display showed a 3D map of local space. Dozens of different colored lines marked the borders of various alien empires. All the lines curved around one section of space like water flowing around a rock. "I have been looking at star charts from many different races," Kethra said slowly. "Every map ends at your people's territory. There are no charts showing what lies beyond human space. Do you find this curious?" John's friendly expression changed. His smile faded and his eyes became more careful. He was quiet for several seconds before answering. "Well, space is very big," John said. "Maybe the map makers just haven't had time to chart everything out there." Kethra had been a diplomat for 200 years. He knew when someone was avoiding the truth. John's answer sounded rehearsed, like something he had said many times before. "But Mr. Carter," Kethra pressed gently, "surely your own people have explored beyond your current borders? Humans are known for their curiosity and desire to explore new places." John stood up from his chair and walked to the window. Outside, ships from a dozen different species docked with the space station. Traders and diplomats from across the galaxy came to Harmony Point to do business. "Ambassador," John said without turning around, "some questions don't have simple answers. Perhaps we should focus on our trade discussions?" But Kethra could not let this go. That night, after John had left with their signed agreements, the fourth-hand diplomat began his real investigation. He started with the Galactic Library. This massive database contained the collected knowledge of every civilization in the known galaxy. Kethra searched for any information about space beyond human territory. He found nothing. Not just empty results, but complete absence of data. It was as if that entire region of space did not exist. Next, he tried the Explorers Guild. These brave beings made their living by charting new star systems and finding safe routes through dangerous space. Their records went back 3,000 years. But every single exploration report stopped at the edge of human space. No guild ship had ever filed a report from beyond that boundary. Kethra felt a chill run through his body. He had found something that should not be possible. How could dozens of spacefaring civilizations all avoid the same region of space? How could the galaxy's best explorers all stop at the same invisible line? He dug deeper into the archives. The Axiom Collective were artificial intelligences that processed information from millions of space probes. They had detailed sensor readings from every corner of the galaxy, but their data also ended at human space. The Luminari were beings, made of pure energy, who had existed for 10,000 years. They could travel through space faster than any ship and see things that regular matter could not detect. But even their ancient records contained no information about what lay beyond human territory. Kethra spent the next week searching through every database he could access: historical records, scientific surveys, military intelligence reports, even private journals from long-dead explorers. The result was always the same. Every source of information about the galaxy ended at human space. It was not just strange, it was impossible. The next morning, Kethra decided to try a different approach. Instead of looking for information about what was beyond human space, he would look for clues about why no one talked about it. He started with the Hegemony War. This conflict had happened 3 centuries ago, long before humans had even invented faster-than-light travel. The Hegemony had been a powerful military empire that conquered dozens of star systems. They had been pushing toward what was now human space when something happened. The official records said the Hegemony forces had stopped their expansion for strategic reasons. The war ended not because they were defeated, but because they chose to retreat. Kethra found this very strange. The Hegemony had never retreated from anything in their long history of conquest. He dug deeper into the war records. In a forgotten archive, he found personal logs from Hegemony commanders. These private records told a different story. The commanders wrote about strange sensor readings from deep space. They described feelings of dread and unease when their ships got too close to certain regions. Several reports recommended immediate withdrawal from sectors that were still light years away from any human settlement. One log entry made Kethra's skin crawl. A Hegemony admiral had written, "The darkness beyond these stars whispers things that should not be heard. My crew reports nightmares when we sleep and shadows moving in empty corridors when we wake. We must leave this place before it notices us." The Hegemony had retreated because they were afraid. But afraid of what? Kethra leaned back in his chair and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the comfortable boundaries of known space, something was waiting. Something that made the galaxy's most powerful civilizations turn away and pretend it did not exist. And humanity stood guard at the edge of that darkness. The ambassador realized he was no longer looking at a simple mapping error or coincidence. He had stumbled onto the galaxy's greatest secret, a secret so dangerous that every spacefaring race had agreed to keep it hidden. Kethra looked at the star charts scattered across his desk. Each one told the same lie. Each one pretended that the galaxy ended where human space began. But now he knew the truth. The galaxy did not end at human space. Something else began there, something that no one dared to name. Kethra could not sleep. For 3 days he had been thinking about what he discovered. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those star charts with their impossible empty spaces. Every civilization in the galaxy was hiding the same secret. He decided to contact the oldest races in the galaxy. If anyone knew the truth, it would be them. The Luminari had existed as beings of pure energy for 10,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall while they drifted through space like living stars. Kethra sent a message to Elder Vash Theron, one of their most ancient leaders. The reply came back in 2 days. It was not what he expected. "Young seeker," the message said, "some boundaries exist for reasons that go beyond simple territory. The humans guard more than just planets and star systems. Perhaps it is better not to ask what lies in the darkness beyond their watch." Kethra read the message 3 times. The elder had not answered his question, but the warning was clear. Even the Luminari, who feared nothing in the galaxy, were afraid of what lay beyond human space. Next, he tried the Stoneheart dynasty. These ancient beings had been building cities on asteroids for 8,000 years. They were known for their detailed records and their love of history. Surely they would have some information about the region beyond human territory. The response came from archive keeper Thal Mandus. It was even more disturbing than the Luminary message. "Ambassador Kethra," it read, Your questions touch upon matters that were settled long ago by minds wiser than ours. The void beyond human space is not empty. It is full of things that should remain sleeping. Do not wake what lies in the deep dark. Kethra felt his 4 hearts beating faster. Deep dark. The same phrase had appeared in the old hegemony. Records. What was the deep dark, and why did every ancient race seem to know about it? He was still thinking about these messages when Captain Lisa Morgan arrived at Harmony Point. The human captain commanded a deep space exploration vessel called the Endeavor. She had spent 20 years exploring the edges of known space. If anyone would have answers, it would be her. Kethra found Captain Morgan in the station's observation deck. She was standing by the large windows looking out at the stars. She was a woman in her 40s with short brown hair and tired eyes. Her uniform showed the wear of someone who spent most of her time in space. Captain Morgan, Kethra said as he approached. May I speak with you? She turned to look at him. Of course, Ambassador. What can I do for you? Kethra hesitated. How could he ask his questions without sounding crazy? Captain, you have explored more of human space than most people. Have you ever wondered what lies beyond your territory? Captain Morgan's expression changed immediately. Her friendly manner disappeared and her eyes became hard and watchful. Ambassador, that's not something I can discuss, but surely as fellow explorers of space we should share knowledge about what we have found. Kethra pressed. I have noticed that all galactic maps end at human space. This seems very strange. Captain Morgan was quiet for a long time. She looked back out at the stars and Kethra could see tension in her shoulders. Tell me something, Ambassador, she finally said. In all your years as a diplomat, have you ever met a species that every other race was afraid to disturb? The question surprised Kethra. No, I cannot say that I have. Think about that, Captain Morgan said. Ask yourself why that might be. She started to walk away, then stopped and turned back to him. Some doors stay closed for good reasons, Ambassador. Sometimes the best thing you can do is not open them. Kethra watched her leave. Another warning. Another hint that something terrible lay beyond human space, but still no real answers. He decided to look deeper into galactic politics. Maybe he could find clues in how different races behaved around human territory. What he discovered made him even more concerned. Trade routes between major civilizations made strange curves around human space. Ships would travel for months longer than necessary to avoid flying too close to human borders. When Kethra looked at shipping records, he found that no commercial vessel had ever requested permission to cross human territory to reach the space beyond. Military patrols from various inner species stayed far away from human borders. The Zelani Empire had 300 warships patrolling their territory, but none of them ever came within 50 light-years of human space. The Crystalline Confederation had similar patrol patterns. It was as if every military force in the galaxy had agreed to give humans a very wide buffer zone. Most strange of all, the Galactic Council had never once discussed expansion beyond human territory. In the 300 years since the Council was formed, they had approved exploration missions to every region of the galaxy. Every region except the space beyond human borders. Kethra pulled up the council records. In all those years of meetings, whenever someone mentioned deep space exploration, the discussion would quickly change to other topics. It was as if there was an unspoken agreement to never talk about that part of the galaxy. He found one record that made his blood run cold. 60 years ago, a young council member from the Helix Collective had proposed a joint exploration mission to map the space beyond human territory. The proposal had been discussed for exactly 7 minutes before being rejected. 3 days later, the young council member had withdrawn his proposal and resigned from the council. He was never seen in galactic politics again. Kethra tried to find more information about this council member, but all records of him had been carefully removed from official databases. It was as if he had been erased from history. The pattern was becoming clear. Every civilization in the galaxy was working together to avoid the space beyond human territory. They had all agreed to pretend it did not exist. But why? Kethra decided to try a different approach. Instead of looking for information about what was out there, he would look for information about when this agreement had been made. He searched through historical records, looking for the moment when the galactic community had decided to avoid that region of space. What he found was even more disturbing than he expected. The avoidance had not started all at once. It had begun slowly, over many centuries. The first records he could find dated back 4,000 years. An exploration ship from the Wanderer fleets had sent a message saying they were investigating strange signals from deep space. That was their last transmission. 2,000 years later, a crystalline research vessel had reported finding ancient structures drifting in the void beyond what was now human space. They described the structures as city-sized ships of unknown design. The research vessel had planned to investigate further, but their next message said they were returning immediately. They would not explain why. Over the centuries, more expeditions had ventured into that region of space. None of them had found anything good. Most had returned quickly with reports of strange sensor readings and feelings of unease. Some had never returned at all. Gradually, the major civilizations had begun to avoid the area, not because of any official agreement, but because everyone who went there came back changed. They came back afraid. By the time humans had developed faster than light travel, the rest of the galaxy had already learned to stay away from that region of space. When humans had begun to expand in that direction, no one had tried to stop them. No one had warned them either. Kethra realized that humanity had walked into a trap that had been waiting for millions of years. They had claimed territory that no one else wanted in a region of space that everyone else feared, but they had not retreated like the others. They had stayed. The question was, why? Kethra spent the next week searching for any human who might tell him the truth. Most humans on Harmony Point were traitors or low-level diplomats. They knew nothing about what lay beyond their territory, or if they did know, they were very good at hiding it. His breakthrough came from an unexpected place. The station's cantina was always busy at night. Beings from dozens of species came to drink and relax after long days of work. Kethra usually avoided the noisy crowd, but tonight he was hoping to overhear useful conversations. He was sitting in a corner booth when he heard someone crying. At a table near the bar, a human man sat alone with a bottle of strong alcohol. He was about 50 years old with gray hair and work-worn hands. His clothes marked him as a ship engineer. Tears ran down his face as he stared into his drink. Kethra watched as the man ordered another bottle. Then another. By the third bottle, the human was talking to himself in a voice loud enough for others to hear. 25 years, the man said to his empty glass. 25 years keeping the watch. And for what? So nobody else has to know. Kethra felt his heart skip a beat. He moved to a table closer to the drunk human. The man looked up as Kethra sat down. "You're that Vorthan diplomat," the man said with thick words. "The one asking questions about maps." "I am Ambassador Kethra," he replied carefully. "And you are?" "Chief Engineer Ben Walsh," the man said. "Or I was until 3 days ago. Lost my ship to pirates on the Outer Rim. 25 years in the Colonial Defense Force, and this is how it ends." Kethra ordered a drink he did not want and sat quietly. Sometimes the best way to get information was to listen. "You know what we really did out there?" Ben asked, not waiting for an answer. "Command called us frontier guards, said we were protecting the colonies from raiders and hostile aliens. But that was a lie." Ben took another drink and leaned closer to Kethra. His voice dropped to a whisper. "We weren't guarding against things coming in from outside. We were making sure nobody tried to go out. Nobody was allowed past the Deep Watch stations, not even our own people." "Deep Watch?" Kethra asked. "The outer ring of defense platforms," Ben explained. "Officially, they're there to watch for enemy ships, but they all point the wrong way. Their sensors don't look out into space. They look deeper into the deep dark where the old things sleep." Kethra felt a chill run through his body. "What? Old things?" Ben looked around the cantina nervously, then leaned even closer. "The first survey teams found them about 300 years ago. The sleepers. Ships bigger than cities, drifting in the void like dead whales. But they're not dead. Never dead, just waiting. Waiting for what? For someone to wake them up, Ben whispered. The science teams figured out there's some kind of hibernation system. The things inside are still alive after millions of years, still dreaming their dark dreams. Ben finished his drink and signaled for another. His hands were shaking now. Why, early exploration teams tried to study them. Big mistake. The first ship that got too close started sending strange messages. The crew reported seeing things that weren't there, hearing voices in empty corridors. By the time a rescue ship arrived, everyone on board was dead, not killed by weapons or disease, just dead, like their minds had been burned out from the inside. Kethra wanted to ask more questions, but Ben was already talking again. Command tried sending in robots. The machines worked fine until they got within a certain distance of the sleeper ships. Then they stopped responding. When recovery teams finally found them, the robots were arranged in perfect circles around the alien vessels. Still functional, but their programming had been completely rewritten. They were protecting the sleepers instead of studying them. So your people decided to stay away? Kethra asked. Ben laughed, but there was no humor in it. We tried that. For about 10 years, we marked the region as off-limits and focused on expanding in other directions. But the sleepers didn't stay asleep, they started reaching out. What do you mean? People in the outer colonies started having the same dreams. Dark dreams about vast ships sailing between dead stars. Dreams about voices calling from the deep dark. At first it was just a few people, then dozens, then hundreds, all having the exact same nightmare. Ben's voice was getting quieter and more frightened. The dreams were a signal. The sleepers were using telepathic projection to call people to them. Every night, more colonists would disappear from their beds. We'd find them the next morning, walking toward the deep dark with empty eyes and no memory of who they were. Kethra felt sick. How did you stop it? We didn't stop it, Ben said. We learned to control it. The scientists discovered that the sleepers respond to observation. The more attention they get, the more active they become. But if you watch them carefully, if you monitor them constantly without getting too close, they stay quiet. So you became guards instead of explorers, Kethra said. Guards, watchers, jailers, call it what you want. Ben finished another drink. Every human colony in the Outer Rim is really a monitoring station. Every patrol ship carries special sensors to watch for sleeper activity. We've built our entire civilization around keeping those things asleep. But why haven't you told the other races? Surely this is a threat to the entire galaxy. Ben's expression darkened. We tried that once. About 70 years ago, Command decided the Galactic Council needed to know. They sent evidence and asked for help. What happened? Within a month, 3 different species had launched research, expeditions to study the sleepers. The Helix Collective sent their best science ships. The Axiom Collective deployed a fleet of analysis probes. The Zalari Empire decided they could use sleeper technology for their own military. Ben shook his head sadly. 2 of those expeditions never came back. The 3rd expedition returned after 6 months, but something was wrong with the crews. They filed reports saying the sleepers were showing increased activity. Brain scans showed that everyone who had been near the alien ships had been changed. Somehow. Changed how? Their minds had been touched by whatever dreams the sleepers were having. The expedition members couldn't sleep without having nightmares about the end of the galaxy. Some of them went insane. Others became obsessed with returning to the deep dark. We had to keep them in mental hospitals for the rest of their lives. Kethra was quiet for a long moment, processing what he had learned. So you decided to keep the secret. We decided to keep the watch, Ben corrected. Alone, because every time someone else tries to help, things get worse. The sleepers feed on attention and curiosity. The more beings that know about them, the stronger they become. Ben stood up unsteadily from his chair. You want to know why the galactic maps ended human space? Because we're not just protecting our territory, Ambassador. We're protecting everyone from what lies beyond it. He started to walk away, then stopped and turned back to Kethra. 25 years I served on the Deep Watch. 25 years staring into the darkness, making sure the old nightmares stayed asleep. You know what the hardest part was? Knowing that if we ever failed, if we ever let our guard down, those things would wake up and sweep across the galaxy like a plague of endings. Ben Walsh walked out of the cantina, leaving Kethra alone with the terrible truth. Humanity had not conquered the region beyond their borders. They had inherited the responsibility of guarding the galaxy's darkest secret. They stood watch over sleeping gods who could destroy everything if awakened, and they had been doing it alone for 300 years. Kethra could not eat or sleep after his conversation with Ben Walsh. The truth about the sleepers filled his mind with dark thoughts. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined vast ships drifting in the void, filled with ancient beings dreaming of the galaxy's destruction. He tried to continue his normal diplomatic work, but he could not focus. During meetings about trade agreements, his mind wandered to the deep dark. While reviewing cultural exchange programs, he thought about humanity's terrible burden. 3 days after talking to Ben, Kethra received a message that made his foreheart stop beating. Ambassador Kethra, the message read, Admiral Kate Phillips of Human Colonial Defense requests a private meeting aboard the dreadnought Indomitable. Please reply with your availability. Kethra stared at the message for a long time. Ben Walsh had disappeared the morning after their conversation. Now the highest levels of human military wanted to talk to him. This could not be a coincidence. He replied that he was available immediately. 2 hours later, a human shuttle arrived at Harmony Point. The pilot was polite but said nothing during the journey to the human warship. Kethra looked out the shuttle windows as they approached the Indomitable. The ship was massive, with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But somehow, knowing what lay beyond human space, it did not seem big enough. Admiral Phillips met him in her private office. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and scars on her face that spoke of battles fought in the depths of space. Her eyes were tired but sharp. This was someone who had seen terrible things and made hard choices. Ambassador Kethra, she said without any greeting. You've been asking questions that could put every living being in this galaxy in danger. Kethra had prepared for this moment, but the Admiral's direct approach still surprised him. I seek only knowledge, Admiral Phillips. Knowledge that seems to be hidden from the galactic community. Knowledge, the Admiral repeated. Let me show you some knowledge. She activated a holographic display in the center of the room. Instead of empty space, the hologram showed massive structures drifting in darkness. Ships or stations so large, they made planets look small. Even in the hologram, they radiated a sense of wrongness that made Kethra want to look away. 300 years ago, our first deep space explorers found them, Admiral Phillips said. The predecessor fleet, ships belonging to a species that ruled this galaxy millions of years before any of our civilizations existed. The hologram zoomed in on one of the structures. Kethra could see details now. The ship was not built like anything he had ever seen. Its surface was covered in strange patterns that hurt to look at. Dark openings in its hull looked like mouths, waiting to swallow light itself. We don't know what destroyed their civilization, the Admiral continued. We don't know why they went into hibernation. But we know they're not dead. Our best scientists have studied them for 3 centuries. They're healing, regenerating, waiting for some signal to wake up. And you've kept this secret all this time? Kethra asked. We've kept watch all this time, Admiral Phillips corrected. The moment our first survey team found them, we had to make a choice. We couldn't destroy them. Their technology is millions of years ahead of ours. We couldn't leave them unguarded. If they woke up, they could sweep across the galaxy and destroy everything we care about. The Admiral walked to the display and pointed at one of the smaller structures. This ship is 12 miles long. Our scientists think it could carry 1 million predecessors in hibernation pods. There are over 3,000 ships in the fleet. Do the math, Ambassador. Kethra felt his legs grow weak. 3 billion ancient beings with technology that made human weapons look like stone tools. If they woke up hungry for conquest, no force in the galaxy could stop them. So we became their guards, Admiral Phillips said. Every human colony in The outer rim is actually a monitoring station disguised as a normal settlement. Every commercial vessel that travels through our space carries sensors to watch for predecessor activity. We've sacrificed our own expansion, our own exploration, to keep these sleeping giants quiet. The hologram changed to show human installations scattered around the predecessor fleet. Kethra could see how carefully they were positioned, close enough to monitor the ancient ships, but far enough away to avoid triggering any automated defenses. But, Admiral, Kethra said, why haven't you told the Galactic Council? Surely this threat concerns all civilizations. Admiral Phillips's expression grew grim. Because we tried that once. 70 years ago, we brought evidence to the Council. We thought other races could help us find a solution. We were wrong. She changed the display to show incident reports. Within a month, 3 different species had launched research expeditions to study the predecessors. The Helix Collective sent 12 science ships. The Axiom Collective deployed 300 analysis probes. The Zalari Empire brought a battle fleet, thinking they could claim predecessor technology for themselves. What happened to them? 2 expeditions never returned. We found debris from some of their ships, but no survivors. The Zalari fleet was discovered 3 months later, drifting in space with all crew members dead. No signs of violence, no damage. To the ships, the crews had simply died in their sleep. The Admiral paused, her expression becoming even darker. The 3rd expedition came back. That was almost worse. The Helix science teams returned after 6 months of study. They filed reports, saying the predecessors were showing increased activity in response to all the attention. Brain scans revealed that everyone who had been near the alien ships had been changed. Changed how? Their minds had been touched by whatever the predecessors dream about. The expedition members couldn't sleep without having nightmares about galactic destruction. Some went insane from the visions, others became obsessed with returning to wake up the predecessor fleet. We had to keep them in secure facilities for their own safety. Kethra felt sick as he realized the implications. The predecessors were responding to being studied. Exactly. The more attention they received, the more active they became. We learned that the predecessor technology includes some form of psychic field. They can sense minds focusing on them, even from great distances. Every scientist who tried to study them, every probe that scanned them, every ship that got too close made them stronger. The Admiral turned off the holographic display. That's when we realized we couldn't share this burden. Every time another species tried to help, the situation got worse. So we made the hardest decision in human history. We would guard the predecessors, alone. For 300 years, Kethra said quietly. For as long as it takes. Every human who serves in the outer colonies knows the truth. We tell them when they're old enough to handle it. They choose to stay and continue the watch, or they transfer to the inner systems and never speak of what they learned. But the cost, Kethra said. Your people could have explored the galaxy. You could have built a great empire. Admiral Phillips smiled sadly. Ambassador, what's the point of building an empire if there's no galaxy left to rule? The predecessors aren't just sleeping. They're dreaming. And their dreams leak into the minds of anyone who gets too close. We've had scientists go mad just from analyzing their technology. We've had entire research stations evacuate because the crew started sleepwalking toward the predecessor ships. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. You want to know what the hardest part is? It's not the isolation or the sacrifice. It's knowing that if we ever fail, if we ever let our guard down for even a moment, those things will wake up, and when they do, they won't just destroy our species. They'll destroy everything. Every race, every civilization, every world that has ever known life. Kethra joined her at the window. In the distance, he could see the edge of human space. Beyond that lay the deep dark and the sleeping nightmares that humanity guarded. What happens now? He asked. Now that I know the truth? Admiral Phillips looked at him with tired eyes. That depends on you, Ambassador. You have 3 choices. Admiral Phillips turned away from the window and looked directly at Kethra. Her expression was serious but not unkind. She had made this speech before, he realized. Other beings had learned the truth, and she had given them the same choices. Your, first option, she said slowly, is to forget this conversation ever happened. You can return to your normal diplomatic duties and never think about the predecessors again. We have very advanced memory modification technology if you prefer that. Root. Kethra felt his skin crawl at the thought. To have his memories changed, to lose the knowledge he had worked so hard to gain seemed like a kind of death. And the second option? You can join the watch, Admiral Phillips said. Help us monitor the predecessor fleet. Use your diplomatic skills to quietly discourage other species from asking too many questions about the region beyond our space. Become part of the conspiracy of silence that keeps the galaxy safe. The Admiral walked back to her desk and sat down. You would be given access to our monitoring stations. You would see the real scope of what we're dealing with. And you would help us carry the burden that humanity has carried alone for 3 centuries. And the third option? Kethra asked, though he was beginning to suspect he did not want to hear it. Admiral Phillips's expression grew very dark. You can try to expose this information to the Galactic Council. You can attempt to warn other species about the predecessors and convince them to help us find a solution. She paused and looked directly into his eyes. But I should warn you, Ambassador. We've had to stop others who made that choice. The secret must be kept. Too many lives depend on it. Kethra felt a chill run through his body. You would kill me to keep this secret? We would do whatever is necessary to protect the galaxy, Admiral Phillips said quietly. The last person who tried to expose the truth was a human scientist, named Dr. Alex Turner. He believed the galactic community had a right to know about the predecessors. He planned to present evidence at a council meeting. The Admiral activated her computer and showed Kethra a file. Dr. Turner died in a shuttle accident 3 days before the council meeting. The evidence he had collected was destroyed in the crash. It was very unfortunate. The message was clear. The accident had not been an accident. I don't enjoy making these threats, Ambassador, Admiral Phillips continued. But you must understand the stakes. If the knowledge about the predecessors spreads, if other species start sending expeditions to study them, the sleeping giants will wake up. And when they do, every living being in the galaxy will die. Kethra sat in silence for several minutes, thinking about his choices. His scholarly nature rebelled against the idea of hiding knowledge. His diplomatic training told him that secrets this big eventually came to light anyway. But his survival instincts warned him that Admiral Phillips was not making empty threats. How long do I have to decide? He asked. You have until tomorrow morning, Admiral Phillips said. After that, one way or another, this conversation ends. The shuttle ride back to Harmony Point was the longest journey of Kethra's life. He stared out the window at the stars and thought about everything he had learned. Somewhere out there, in the deep dark, 3 billion ancient beings slept in their city-sized ships, and humanity stood guard over them, sacrificing their own future to protect a galaxy that did not even know it was in danger. When he returned to his office, Kethra found a message waiting for him. It was from his government on Vorth Prime. The collective wanted him to submit a report about his investigation into galactic cartography. They were curious about his findings and wanted to know if there were new regions of space worth exploring. Kethra stared at the message for hours. His people trusted him to bring them knowledge that would help their civilization grow and prosper. How could he tell them that the greatest discovery in galactic history was also the most dangerous secret ever kept? He thought about Ben Walsh, the broken engineer who had served 25 years watching over sleeping nightmares. He thought about Admiral Phillips and the terrible weight of command she carried. He thought about all the humans living on the outer rim, pretending to be colonists while actually serving as guards against the end of everything. 300 years they had kept this secret. 300 years of sacrifice and isolation. 300 years of standing between the galaxy and its destruction. Could he really expose them? Could he really force the truth into the open, knowing what would happen when curious species started sending ships to investigate the predecessors? Kethra made his decision. The next morning he met Admiral Phillips again. This time, the meeting was in a small conference room on Harmony Point. Just the two of them, with no weapons or guards visible, but Kethra knew that human security was watching every word. I've made my choice, he said simply. Admiral Phillips nodded. And what choice is that? I choose to help you keep the secret, Kethra said. But I don't want to join your watch. I want to return to my normal duties and use my position to quietly discourage exploration beyond human space. The Admiral looked surprised. You don't want full access to our monitoring data? No, Kethra said. I think the fewer beings who know the complete truth, the better. I'll do what I can from my position as a diplomat. I'll make sure trade routes continue to avoid your territory. I'll discourage scientific expeditions that might head in your direction. But I don't need to know every detail about the predecessors. To do that? Admiral Phillips studied him for a long moment. Why? Why are you willing to help us hide this from your own people? Kethra thought about how to explain his reasoning. Because, he said finally, sometimes the greatest act of love is protecting people from truths they cannot handle. My species is curious by nature. If they knew about the predecessors, they would want to study them, and that would wake them up. He looked out the window at the busy space station. Dozens of species were represented here, all going about their daily lives in blissful ignorance of the threat that slept beyond human space. Besides, he added, humanity has proven they can handle this responsibility. For 3 centuries, you've kept the galaxy safe. Who am I to interfere with that? Admiral, Phillips smiled for the first time since he had met her. Thank you, Ambassador. You have no idea how much this means to us. 3 months later, Kethra submitted his official report to the Vorthon Collective. He explained that his investigation into galactic cartography had revealed nothing unusual. The gaps in star charts were simply the result of normal territorial boundaries and standard unexplored regions. He recommended that the collective focus its expansion efforts on well-documented areas closer to the galactic core. The report was accepted without question. The collective continued its normal trade and exploration activities, never knowing how close they had come to learning the galaxy's most dangerous secret. But late at night, in the secure communications chamber of his diplomatic vessel, Kethra received encrypted reports from human monitoring stations scattered throughout the outer rim. He read sensor data from the predecessor fleet, watching for any signs that the ancient giants might be stirring from their million-year slumber. The reports were always the same. The predecessors remained dormant. The deep dark stayed quiet. The galaxy continued to exist because humanity kept its lonely vigil. Kethra had learned that the price of knowledge was responsibility, and sometimes the greatest responsibility was knowing when to keep silent. The galactic map still ended at human space. No one still dared to ask why. And in the deep dark beyond, the sleepers continued their dreams of ending while humanity stood guard over a secret that could destroy or save everything. Somewhere out there, Admiral Phillips and thousands of others like her watched over sleeping, gods protecting a galaxy that would never thank them because it would never know what they had sacrificed. And Kethra helped them carry that burden, one diplomatic conversation at a time.